morning. Can you hear me okay? All right. It's going to be an interesting talk. I have about 14 slides and lots of speaker notes, and the speaker notes are not showing up, so I'll have to improvise. But I might be making up time if I forget to talk about something. So, okay. So a little bit about me. Back in 2009, I was the guy who started DevOps. Some of you might be familiar with that. So I know how it is to be in an exciting new field and to learn about it. I was happy enough to be at the first Serverlessconf in New York, where I saw a lot of the same energy floating around new ideas. So that's interesting. I really work a long time in tech, about 20 years. People asked me for the conference to send me a picture from me. I took a selfie in my current state, and they decided to publish a very old picture of me. I guess that shows you like how long I've been into this field. I've seen the hypes come and go. So yeah. I work for a startup, 3 years. We're working in the media sector. We're about 7 people. And one of the new products we're working on is kind of like a Periscope, but for TV stations. What makes that interesting from a point of view infrastructural-wise is that when you work in the media and they say, please go to our website, bam, everybody comes. So scaling for us is really a big point. Scaling, and with it, the cost to keep it running within an acceptable way. Not only we have to estimate the first guess on how many people we will have, but imagine if it is more popular, we need to start scaling within that 1 minute. So you can see, obviously, serverless is giving us a big promise that we could do that. The second part, why we're so interested about it, is that we have 1 hour that our app needs to work, that 1 hour of the show. That means if something goes wrong, we'll have to fix it in that 1 hour. So we'll have to do deploys, we'll have to do updates during the show. So I always say this feels like Formula One. You know, the people in the pit stop is like, zzz, 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 go. That's basically how we want to do things. It gives you a bit of context on why we want to do serverless. Serverless, as many new technology, start with, it's better. It's better. Maybe a quick show of hands. Who consider himself a developer? Raise your hands. Right, most of the people. Ops people. Okay. Business people? Few? Okay, love you guys. Why is that? If the bank tells me, and no offense, Capital One, we don't have Capital One in Belgium, so I can say that. We're gonna make our service better. What feeling do you get? A, it's gonna get less personal. B, I'll probably end up paying anyway. I'll have to live through the new technologies, hiccups every time they say this. Okay, it's progress. We consider this progress. I booked my train coming here, and I booked it in the wrong direction. Happens. And I went on the website. Okay, you can change your ticket, but I could change my ticket. I could change the hour and all that stuff. But I couldn't change the direction. Nobody had thought about that. And if you call us, you're gonna pay 14 euros extra to take the ticket. And then we're gonna charge you 30 euros per person on the ticket to change your ticket. That's not my service. I would gladly have done that through your website, but you didn't give me the option. So is it really better? Okay. Everything's okay? Whew, no slides. Slideless, yes, I like that. I'm good?
You're good. I hope it stays.
Right. So, whatever provider, Bang, Eurostar, they will say to you, it's going to be better because it uses the latest technology. You know, you heard that argument before? Yes. It makes them look hip, like it will make you look hip when you wear these t-shirts and have done all the gotta catch them all. But we don't have to forget from what technology is used. Whatever you could be doing with serverless, you probably could have done it before. Yes. So that technology under the hood, I'm talking about under the hood, is probably very similar. There's going to be some containers there, some scheduling, some proxying, but they might have that new shiny pixie dust layer for you to make it the latest technology. In our company, we made the jump to Docker because of the same reasons. We wanted to have a consistent deploy at peak load and say, okay, if we just take a container, we can very fast make it like very consistent deploy over the environment. The scaling, the same thing with having all the containers running, we could scale some function very dynamically. Obviously not on the scale of a provider like Amazon does. But it drove us to the new technology for Docker and CoreOS, and it's now driving us with serverless. Same drive, we went from the fat application to microservices to make it very fast, like changeable, updatable during the same thing. And that's also now what drives us to go to serverless, because maybe we can get even faster to do that. Faster. Okay, didn't know I was going to end on that slide. So, remember the bank saying to you, this is a new system, it's going to be faster. Is serverless faster? Is that an argument? Well, you can get faster up and running without slides. All right. Like Pete mentioned, when you're a business and you want to start running your company, you don't have to think about the whole hassle of managing service. So that makes you go faster in a process. But if you look at the technology, who has experienced those latencies with serverless? A couple of them. Especially when you're starting up a new container, or it's waiting for the new container. We spent so many years saying in web operations, every millisecond counts for the end user. But if we're scaling Lambda functions, or Amazon is scaling it for us, every user X amount of time will have that delay. So from that point of view, did it get faster? Not really, in my opinion. The fact that you still have to wait, in our case, to have the container spin up, in our case, that would have meant that we'll have to pre-warm the containers. Okay, so we have to generate a load to anticipate the load. What did we gain? So think about that. If your occasional user is kind of clicking in your website, can you afford that delay in doing that? You can add API gateway, and if you use API gateway with Lambda functions in your VPC, then you're gonna have to put an internet gateway. And again, some more latency to the party. If your provider of authentication is gonna be outside, they're not as close, they're somewhere over the internet, and they have to communicate. Latency add on. So yes, we can work faster as a developer process, but the latency it adds might not be what you really want. So be aware of that when you're doing any serverless stuff there. So who thinks it's faster, serverless? A couple, okay. It's good. So the majority doesn't think it's faster. Interesting. Oh, okay. From the end user perspective, because that's what the service, is promising us. And I don't care how you organize internally. That's a gain, I guess, for your company to spend less time. But as an end user, serverless as such doesn't bring me specific value from that perspective. More cables.
No, just plugging it back in and out again. Give me a second. Let's take this all over the place.
Gonna like my next slide. It's so applicable. Wait until it shows up. Yes. So is serverless more reliable? There's different ways to look at it. From a development point of view, I think if you go down the trend of microservices and splitting it up in functions, looking at that one piece of code that only does that, you can gain reliability because you're focusing on one function. Let's say that gives you reliability. If you go to, in the old days, just the EC2 cloud, not the Lambda cloud, you get more reliability. Why? Because you assume that party is doing a better job than you. Even though some people might do it better, but you assume they will do it better for you. But what if they fail? In our case, during a show, something happens. We don't own any servers. We're blind. I'm sorry, customer, Amazon failed. That's not really what the customer wants to hear. So it's interesting to see the different options. Should I choose a different cloud, different region, or I think Auth0 has the option like, hey, you can use our service, but you can also use it as bring your own servers. At least you have an option there to kind of go over that. Think about if you're using API gateway and you have Lambda functions behind it, what if one of those start failing? We had that. Why? Because we didn't fully understand how a Lambda works. We were thinking about Lambda as a pure function, saying in no state when the next time it's called. People who know me know my rant coming up. It's shared disk, shared memory, and shared networking. Anyway, so what happened to us? Our processes were generating kind of animated GIFs for the TV shows, and they were filling up TMP. And guess what? TMP in their implementation is shared across the executions on that one container. So all of a sudden, at a certain peak, it started to have failures. Disk full. Disk full. Why? So be aware of that. It's still shared, however you think about it. Even memory, if you have a memory leak in one, it just, for example, on Node.js, if you use that, it's just going to use the same memory for the executions. And if one just starts flowing over, the whole container is just going to exit and start new. You can use that to your advantage. Like instead of downloading every time the whole file or generating the same images, you can use that file system as a cache, although they're probably not going to advise you to, but use it as a temporary cache. Like, hey, instead of downloading it again, if it's already there on the container, just don't re-download it again. Or you can use like global memory caching for some items you don't want to fetch all over and over again, but once it's fetched for one container, you can have that reused so you don't have to do it again. We use almost a service for everything, so including for log and monitoring, on which I'll come back later. But from a reliability standpoint, initially what we thought, let's just have a Lambda log something to a remote system, have some analytics dump. We were not using the CloudWatch stuff, but had our own monitoring system. But what happened if all those Lambda is going to connect to your system? It's just all these TCP connections coming to your server. So the reliability, obviously, kind of requires you to understand the system that is actually under the hood. And I find it not well described. It's kind of like misty, vague, how they describe it. So if you want to make it more reliable, I would urge the vendors to open up at least that you have a better understanding under the hood what's happening there. More secure. Okay, talking this morning in the cab with people from Capital One. Ooh, API gateway, it's somewhere outside still. It's not in our VPC. Please, let's have this. Our credentials. First, I saw the developers just ship the credentials with your deploy. Okay, no, maybe we'll have to have stages, environment variables, and don't deploy it with the code, but still, it's out there. Back in the days, HA proxy and so on, we used to be able to filter people coming in. Now, we can't. So there's a big opportunity to improve. I'm not saying this is the reason why you shouldn't use serverless. Maybe it's a reason why you shouldn't use serverless yet. I like the idea of having my credentials that I need on my front end, that they're temporarily encrypted, like tokens and so on. Something we started doing with, what's the name of the HashiCorp tool again? Forgot the name. Vault, yes. Things like that, which now all of a sudden kind of have a problem of doing that. Also, filtering somebody out based on an IP address, I haven't seen that happen with one of the tools. If you really want to block somebody, it's not there yet. So secure, well, if somebody's hammering at you and you don't care about it, that's fine. But it'll maybe take away your quota of your API gateway call. Even if you have plans and so on, they can still exhaust you. Or what if you want to have, if you're calling directly Lambda functions, we had our limit raised to 30,000 executions, although I had to wait for 2 days for that. It's good. There's no way of saying this Lambda function can only get this number of requests. It's pretty annoying. Things we could do in the past, even on a user-based level, this user can only do X amount of requests. But it's not there yet. The other part is web filtering. Of course, we could audit your code that you deploy, but maybe you're not always that close in control of the code that you deploy. Things like stop server-side scripting, all that stuff before, things we would be doing with HA proxy before. Maybe if we can get like web application firewall, maybe integrated with the cloud distribution and the API gateway, we'll have a better way of dealing with it, and maybe some extensions. So it gives you the idea that it's good to get started, but once you start thinking about all these enterprise things to tick off the box and the risks you want to take, is it secure? Maybe it's secure enough for you. Go ahead. If it's not, be aware of all the consequences that the serverless bring. Maybe you can use it only in your VPC. That's fine, but beware if you expose it outside. Cheaper? Definitely, but not always. Let's say, think about Periscope. I hit the emoji button. Everybody clicks the emoji button. Every request a Lambda function? Maybe not that cheap. Somebody from the business said to me, it's annoying that I can't budget before my project what it's going to cost me. It's metered. Yes, but how high is the meter going to go? So when we were using servers, we could say, well, this is the amount of server power we get, X amount of users will get in, and after that, the rest can't work, but at least I can guarantee this amount of people working. I find that pretty hard now to do with the existing tools. So again, opportunity, if you want to make that, for me, an understandable cost, an expected cost, and maybe have a way to say, well, if your Lambda function's been executing, firing Lambda after Lambda for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, why not just go for the hour plan and go away? Maybe I want to have some rules that I can put on the metering to do that. Because it's typically you want to have a burst, and then the burst is gone, and then there's the steady flow. Things we would do with the servers and say, well, okay, X amount of servers, scale up, scale down, keep this, but this, I know what the cost is going to be of the thing. It isn't always cheaper on the tech and the consume of the resources. There's definitely cheaper on not having to manage anything. Now, if I trust you with your service and I have to hire somebody who does all the updates, who has to work on this stuff, that's going to cost me. But don't think you'll end up being cheaper. People have been saying that with automation anyway. Yes, we're going to automate you out of the job. Guess what? Usually that ends up, we're going to do more with the same people, but it's good. So is it cheaper? Yes, that you can do more. And definitely the cost of paying people is probably the most expensive part versus the cost of your resources. So you'll gain on that, but now your developers have to be aware, learn the new system, so there's a cost there. And guess what? They have to keep up with the updates of the services. So now you have to have somebody looking not at the patches of the OS, but looking at the patches of every service that you're using. And maybe the hardest part is you don't control when they update. So you have to keep the steady pace of updating, otherwise you'll hit a problem there. So we'll say to the customer it's cheaper, but beware if it's actually going to be cheaper. Maybe you don't have to tell the customer it's cheaper and try to do it internally. But I doubt it will, in the end, get cheaper for the customer. Better service. We're going to use this kiosk system and then you'll get a better service. Really? Okay, press 1 for, we've all had that stuff. Not saying this is the equivalent, but to do a better service, I think serverless has to man up on log systems, analytics, all those things that are typically done by ops people. Why aren't these just included in the service? Some of them do, some of them are good. They really make a nice interface of logs, graphs, and so on. And I know it's hard for a generic service like a cloud provider to provide the best experience for monitoring, but I think they can do a better job at structuring their logs, making sure that the alerts systems are more easily integrated instead of having to get the data, don't have a backtrack of the data. So basically what I found is most of them say, figure it out on yourself. If you want to be a differentiator there, if somebody also runs a service and he has that baked into the offering he has for that one service, it's going to be a competitive advantage if you do that. New features, because many cases that's what the customer is interested in. Well, not the fact that they're new, is that useful new features, of course. And focusing on those parts, I don't think serverless says anything about it. Although the creating a service from nothing clearly helps in using different services to get faster and deliver a new feature. But will it really get faster? You still have to think about that. Even if you test them, testing is still in its infancy, in my opinion. Not in the unit test level, the one service testing, but integrating everything. You still have to wait for your suite to finish anyway. You still have to wait for your people to collaborate on the function level to do that. So will it be faster? The potential is there, but the human level will probably be the blocker anyway, if we're doing the new features thing. In our case, let's say we were on a show, and on that show, a producer of the show said, well, it would be nice if the number of the audience votes and the professional jury vote would be counted together. So typically we would have like 60% votes of the audience, 40% from the professional jury, maybe let's say 50. And when you combine them, you would get a percentage. But he said, no, let's just add them. It's 200%. So during the show, he was asking this because it would be nice to display that on the show. Okay, so we created that feature very fast. It's just a few lines of code. And then we had to wait 15 minutes for a test suite to finish. And then we started cutting tests because we wanted to have it faster. And then during the load, all these external dependencies are starting to fail. And so we didn't even get faster. Even though, the deployment may be very fast, but integration was very fast, the test suite still took a long time and the majority of the time, especially the more and more complex your environment is going to get. So I guess it's for all new technology. It's not specifically on Serverlessconf. But I could have done a very detailed tech presentation keynote, but that's not the point. In my opinion, there's going to be way better people explaining their use cases. The point I want to make is that whatever you do on that level, maybe we aren't there yet, so please keep helping advance the field there. But whatever we should do should eventually give a benefit to the business, and not the cheesy ones, that we did. So it's not just because it looks nice on your curriculum that you're now using serverless parts. Try to figure out in your use case what benefit that you're bringing with the serverless parts. And the rest from there is going to be an easy sell, but just selling it as technology. I know people have been hammering this in and out, but if it was all about the business, I guess more than the half of the room would be with business people because they'd be very interested. And we're still playing with Legos and say, oh, let's change the Lego. Now it's not an Imperial fighter. Let's change this. So I guess that's my main message. And the other part too is that I remember the first Serverlessconf keynote speaker, Amazon, had big muscles, way bigger than me, had a baseball stick and was hitting servers. Go away with the servers. And the end of DevOps, which, hurt me. But I figured he's wrong, so he's plain wrong. You'll have to collaborate, maybe not internally now inside your company, but you'll have to collaborate with all these services that you use. I become friends with most of the services I use anyway. I know the people behind there, and they love to get my reports if something fails, if they can improve something. And I get a view in their roadmap, I get their monitoring, I get all their internal stuff. I could have said, well, this is the API, this is where it ends, but it doesn't. The collaboration will just keep on going in a different way. So I ask you now, are we making a difference with serverless? I think the potential is really there. We're still scratching the hello world and maybe some beyond that we could have done with the other tech because we're dry running the new tech with what we do. I think the potential of relating it even more to business-focused functionality is where we're at. I don't know how that's going to look, but my personal feeling is that still that we're at the start of it. It's a mindset change. We'll give up control. We kind of rely on the others to do their job, like we used to do internally now with dev and ops working together, and now we just go outside our company. But the risk is there if they fail, if they have a different agenda, if they want to do something else, if they want to do an upgrade. Are you prepared to give that up as well? Maybe you can very easily switch providers from functionality. We do a lot of mobile apps, and it's one of the things I noticed that we just swap in providers in and out. Oh, you have new functionality? Oh, we go there. We go here. It's really nice. But your architecture itself has to allow it. So it's not by going to DynamoDB and then writing everything to DynamoDB and making that like very focused or using all the Amazon services. So beware of the locking that we're actually creating by doing so. I think a lot of the frameworks are taking that into mind and making it more abstract and allowing us to kind of deploy in different clouds and do that. But probably, Oracle would say in the end the database always wins because that's where you store your state. All the rest is going to be okay. And last time I took, the database are harder to scale. And if your load is coming, okay, Dynamo can scale up very well and down. It's pretty annoying. So you have a sudden peak. So just to give you a few of the examples that we're hitting in our company that kind of makes us wanting it, but also be cautious about anything on serverless. So that was it. I think we made up on time.